I'd like to welcome everybody to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, June 8th, 2021 at 7:11 p.m. I'd like to welcome the residents and anybody else watching also. This meeting is being live streamed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are following House Bill 404 that allows public bodies to meet electronically through July 2021. With that said, I know probably like a lot of us, being out and about with the residents, probably seeing more of the residents. As we all know, during the summer months, a lot of residents have inquired to me when we are going to resume regular meetings. I did let them know that we, as a body, did discuss that, and we said we were going to finish out the month, because when we were talking about at that time, we didn't even, the governor talked about his order, but it wasn't complete. So we would have this meeting, and next, our council meeting done YouTube. I know we talked about doing it both ways, but we will resume where the public, once the body council feels different, and myself, but I think we've all in agreement that whether we, if council recesses for July and August, then when we come back to our regular meetings. We might, I already see there, and I'll talk a little bit about it, what I can talk about. Looks like we might have to have a special meeting at the end of this month. Whether or not you'd want to have that meeting YouTube or open, it'd be for a certain purpose. So I'll share a little bit of that. Tom Jordan will share some of that with you in executive session next week. We'll have an executive session next week too. For Mr. Jordan, for the land purchase, also for pending litigation and employees. So with that said, that gave us I just kind of wanted to answer that. I know some residents are inquiring. And so we did call meeting to order. Angela's here now. Roll call.
Councilwoman Brenner Miller.
Here.
Councilman Linville.
Yes.
Councilwoman Allen.
Here.
Councilwoman Chalaski.
Here.
Councilman Spitznagel.
Here.
Councilman Weed.
Present. Okay. All council present, along with our fiscal officer, Angela Reve, our law solicitor, John Montello. Okay. Any comments related to the agenda? Okay. And as residents know, or anybody watching, you can add comments at any time. Sarah or Angela, who are monitoring the meeting, will let us know if there's any questions, if we can answer those or any comments. Okay. Do we have any people watching?
I can just not.
Sarah, how many?
Move fast.
Currently, we're at 6.
Okay.
Just like, I'll take the speed here.
Are you ready to let me know when you're?
You can keep moving.
Okay. Well, the next item is Resolution 2021-13. That's the tax budget. We did talk about that in our last COW meeting. That's a housekeeping item. It's an item where we've already passed the budget, but we need to submit this basically summary of the budget to the county. I'll let Angela just kind of give a quick briefing, and if anybody has any questions relating to that, we can discuss it.
Right, so this is passed every year, and this is the budget based on what we've budgeted for this current year, plus some estimates for next year, so that the county can give us our certificate of estimated resources for 2022. It also allows them to obviously make sure that the property tax rate, is there. If we don't pass a tax budget, then they can't assess our properties here in Walton Hills. So for their regular rate and for our inside limit.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you. Angela, what exactly is a certificate
Each year, you get a certificate of estimated resources from the county that gives you basically what you have to work within. It's your means to work within for the year based on what you've told them you anticipate to come in for income and where you left off at the end of the previous year with your budget and encumbrances.
Okay.
Yeah,
So they don't actually come in and look at our
they do not.
checkbooks
And the
and
certificate
say, yeah,
can be-
you have the money you said you did.
They do not, and what will happen is sometimes at the end of the year, you end up going over. And you're over appropriated, so to speak, which technically shouldn't happen, but it's happening. But you can also recertify at any point in the year. So if we have some major windfall and we anticipate we're gonna have more income and we'd like our certificate to show that we have more available to spend, we can amend that. Or if we have expenditures that we know are gonna be cut in half for some reason, we can always get an amended certificate throughout the year, but there has to be an initial one that's issued to start the year out.
So if our expenditures are less than what we said, we don't have to do anything, or the income is in line with what we said, but our expenditures are less, there's nothing that we have to do.
Right, as long as you're staying within what they've
Within
given you for
whatever you
that year.
had. And
Yeah,
then when
you
we
don't
do
have to.
next year's budget, for example, come time to do next year's budget, and we should, Councilman Whedon made the statement, and I wholeheartedly agree that the time to start looking at it is now, obviously. But we don't reference what we told the state with this.
This is for the county.
I mean, the
So,
county, yeah, we don't look at what we told the county to formulate our budget
No, because
when
what
we're
we're telling
doing
the
it.
county is part of what we've already budgeted for 2021 and kind of estimating where
Right.
we think we're actually gonna land at the end of the year.
Right, but what I'm trying to get at is when we formulate our budget for next year, we're not going back and referencing this document at all. This is a
No, we reference
projection.
our previous budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we are making our budget based on our planned income and planned expenses,
Correct.
not on this.
Correct, and a big piece of this, which is also a big piece of our regular budget, is what we anticipate to get in property taxes
Right.
for police pension and general fund. So that's where the tax budget comes in each year, to let the county know that, yes, we still anticipate we're gonna be getting this much, that's part of what we're gonna use to operate each year, and then kind of here's where it fell in line and how we're using it.
Okay.
Any other questions related to that resolution? Any questions from residents or anybody watching? Okay, we can always come back to it too. Okay. Item B, Resolution 2021-14, Dunham Road resurfacing asphalt paving extension. As you can see, that work has taken place. We did give the blessing to it while they were there, so we didn't incur a larger expense by asking them to come back or even finish it. I think we made the right decision. It's the right thing to do. It took us to the top of the hill, around the bend, and this just is an accounting thing. It shows, it approves the expenditure that we're making for that extension, the piece of legislation, and it shows the change to that. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Mayor Program, I had a couple of questions on the document, whether or not there was some perhaps some language that may need to be added if it's not already. Because when I read through the document, and again, we've already, we verbally kind of expressed, and some of us in email expressed our agreement with the need to do this work. But if you come down to, I don't know what paragraph it is, it says Section 1. The language that reads there says, "The Council of the Village of Walton Hills hereby authorizes the mayor to execute a change to the contract with Fabrizi Trucking and Paving Company Okay, so stop there, but then if you go back to the top of the document, it says a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Fabrizi. So is it authorizing a contract change order with Fabrizi? Is that what the language should say at the top of the page is my first question. That would coincide with the very specific, clear details in section 1.
You want to answer that now?
It's semantics. I mean, if you want to, you certainly can make it a carrot section. To execute a change to the contract, we could to execute we could amend it by putting a change.
Yeah, because we're not executing a new contract.
Right.
Correct.
We're modifying the current existing contract. So,
Change the title, you're saying?
yeah, I think it's,
Execute a change.
yeah, contract change or contract change order.
Whatever you want to do, because we didn't need, this is just as far as legality, have it, whatever you want, if you're comfortable with that. Do they need to make the amendment on the floor? Can we make it for the next
We
meeting?
can make it before the next meeting.
Okay, why don't we do that? Change the wording. Let go through the wording so
A
that everybody's
resolution
comfortable.
authorizing the mayor to execute a change to the contract with the Breezy Trucking and Paving Company for additional paving of Dunham Road and declaring an emergency.
Okay, how's it, Ray?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's fine.
Okay, good.
Okay, then I had just for clarification, in the third whereas paragraph, whereas the Village of Walton Hills has requested that additional work be performed by Fabrizi for additional work items are an integral part of the Dunham Road project and eligible for reimbursement under the funding agreement between the Village of Walton Hills and Cuyahoga Department of Public Works, not anticipated at the plan. Is that talking about the original $2,475,000 contract and whatever the percentages that the county was going to reimburse? Is that what that's referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, that would refer to the contingency that we have built into the contract.
Well, the contingency is spoken of specifically also in section 1. I'm just saying that's the general, we're talking about the basic contract. Is that what that's talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of stole it from the other change orders that we did prior. I don't think I might have put the additional work there. That was the only change to the paragraph that was contained in the other change orders.
Okay, and then my last question is this also in section 1. It's the last full sentence that begins with the word further. It's about middle ways down. It says further, if the city engineer determines that reimbursement for materials for the extension in the amount of $6,100 is appropriate, the mayor is hereby authorized to sign any documents necessary to pay said costs from the 2021 County Road and Prevention Maintenance Reimbursement Program award. So we have a contingency, but then we send, if the engineer determines that its reimbursement is appropriate, then the mayor would have the authorization to pull that up to $6,100 from a separate pot. Is that's?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Unless that would be reduced to 15,000. I think that 15,000 includes that 6,100. So there was some question of whether you were going to do other road programs or not. So I didn't know if the city engineer wanted us to use those funds for the preventive maintenance reimbursement program for this project or another project. So I kind of left it up to him to determine that if it's appropriate or I don't know.
No, that's right, that's exactly, because that's what we talked to Joe about. So that is exactly true, Ray, that's exactly what it would be. And then it would give me the authorization to pull it from the 2021 County Road Preventive Maintenance Reimbursement Program that we received. That $22,000 for Dunham Road, I would pull that we pull that $6,100 out of that $22,000.
okay, but that may cut short the rest of whatever work could be done with the rest of Dunham Road all the way to Sagamore. Yeah, I mean, if you're using $6,100 out of $22,000 for this portion of work, that means the rest of Dunham Road, past this point all the way to Sagamore Road, is the available reimbursable funds from the county is now reduced to do the rest of that work when we already have a contingency to cover?
This is our net after using the contingency.
That's right.
Okay,
Say that
the
again?
6,100 is our net after using, I think about 9,000 it was.
The contingency is 50,000,
Right.
and we've used none of it, right?
Here, for some reason, the project's not complete, what if that contingency changed? There was some questions from council, what if, and all of us, what happens if something happens and now we're using more of the contingency? And I thought what we wanted to do was pay for the materials out of to soften that 15,000. We'd rather pay for it out of the contingency, I mean, you know, if that comes first, but it covers, this would cover it either way.
Yeah. So we, at this point, are we anticipating any other unexpected not occurrences, but unexpected expenditures that may have to come out of we're almost at the gate. I mean,
Not that we're aware of.
we're just about there.
I haven't heard anything, the project's going well. If anything, it would be kind of, you know, a surprise. They haven't come to us, Ray, in the last meeting, said there was no change orders or nothing. So we don't anticipate it. I did ask Joe to be on tonight. Is Joe, are you on tonight?
Yeah, 'cause I do have one more question for him if he is on.
Yeah, that'll work. Let's see if if not, he'll probably come back. He told me it might be a little later.
Mr.
So,
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
go ahead.
my understanding is that the $6,100, if it comes out of the preventive maintenance reimbursement program, that's strictly material costs, and that
Right.
would be
Yes.
the amount for that section of the road,
Correct.
because we would still end up having to pay $22,000.
But we have for the, but
Preventive maintenance.
yeah, that was for that whole section of Dunham Road
But we're still,
from all the way to Sagamore.
right, and that's only material cost.
Right.
That's not any of the labor.
But Ray said, why take it out of there, any of it out of there?
When you already have $50,000 pot of money.
No, I
It's-
understand
it's-
that, but what I'm saying, my understanding was that's how much that section of the
Right.
road would
Right.
be normally.
Right.
That we're not taking extra money that is going to stop us from finishing Dunham.
Okay, so we're saying this section of road was included in the grant application to Cuyahoga County Road Maintenance Program?
No.
No.
I'm not sure, I think the
No.
engineer would need to answer.
It's my understanding.
Let's not, I think the question is, so we don't really
I
have to get
mixed
hung up
pots.
on it. I think, Ray, your question is, if the contingency fund is there to cover the 16.5, are we gonna use, the 15,000. If the contingency fund is there, we're gonna use that before we use anything from the county road program. That's the question.
That's my question.
Correct. So and I think the answer is we would go to the contingency fund first, and then the reason just like anything, we're very concerned about our secondary roads, and we're trying to save money to repave some of these second road areas. So when we talked about the whole thing, and we all know the contingency fund is a safety net. It's something built in, it helps for those expenses. And we wanted to make it where the worst scenario is that we would be able to take some money from the county road program we received for Dunham Road, and then the rest would come out of our coffers. So that was the reason, but it's a good question now on if the contingency fund money is there. I think the question and the answer is we're going to use it. So let's see what Joe
Yeah,
says.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, it's my understanding, let's say they use zero of the contingency fund. We get $50,000 back, right? Because that's a contingency fund. If we choose to use part of that money from the contingency fund, we would get the $50,000 minus the $6,100. Or if we choose to use the county program, we get our $50,000 back. And so, in other
It's
words,
really our money anyway.
it's no matter what pot you take it out of, unless they burn the contingency fund, now we're talking something different. I would suggest taking it out of the contingency fund also first, just for that reason. But barring anything happening, it's going to come out of one pot or another. It's going to be a net zero to the village.
The
Right.
purpose of, I think why, and I know, John, you said why we wanted it in there, because I remember talking about it, is we don't have to come back to the table either way.
Right.
That's the reason. So
Right.
I guess the question is just to Joe, is the contingency fund would come first and then this. And it, so let's see, you want me to call him what he said?
I'm waiting for him to answer. We're still getting that out of the contingency. So the way Joe explained it originally was that the 61 would come out of the county program for the materials. The net after that to the village would be the 8,900 that would come out of the contingency. So correct. Could we take the entire 15,000 approximately that's going to cost out of contingency? That's what I'm looking for the answer.
And are we?
All right, Ray, did you have another question? Because we can present.
Yeah, so just to sum that up, yeah, I would love to see.
We'll use the contingency first.
Okay, yeah, thank you, because I just love to see more potential additional repairs on the rest of Donner Road out of the road maintenance program. So my other question for Joe is, since we're almost at the gate, we're pretty much done, so when will there be a final deduction change order? Say we took the 16,000, now there's 34 left in contingency. So will there, to close out the contract, will there be a deduction change order? And are there any other work that was not performed that may lead to a deduction in the total cost of the project? Perhaps we said there we contracted for, I'm just making this up, 9 manhole covers or manholes to be replaced, and we only needed to do 8. So I'm just looking for what does a contract closeout documents look like as it relates to on the finance side? That's a long question for you, Mr. Joe.
Okay, and I just want to make clear to the residents watching, we do have Joe Gelati on the phone. He's the village engineer who works for Chagrin Valley Engineering. So that's kind of who we're dragging into the conversation. He couldn't make it here tonight, but he's able to be here virtually. And he is actually overseeing that project and is our representative when it comes to the Dunham Road project. He is our village engineer. So, Joe, were you able to hear Councilman Whedon's question there? We're on a little delay, so we have to wait for him to type his answer.
I think his answer will be, it's too early to tell, because he's not going to know the final numbers.
Yeah, we're not.
But he'll be able to answer the question, just how the documents
We
close
keep
out, John.
retainage,
That's,
so, whatever's left that you don't spend, then yeah, we're going to owe less on the final bill.
right, that's okay. Let Joe answer how the documents are. John, are you familiar how the documents close out, or?
Well, I would assume they do an accounting, but I'm sure they do. But,
They will have to do an accounting so that we can get our reimbursement.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Right. Well, let's see how it, go ahead.
normally, you just, the contractor presents the final contract price, and it's compared to the original contract price, and either there's an underrun or an overrun, and you're looking to see if there were any underruns available, meaning that they came in under, and so we spend less technically.
Closeout
So-
document will be prepared at conclusion of construction, Joe said.
So he,
That's fine.
Well, those are good questions. This is the biggest project the village has ever had. From what, according to Joe. So it's the biggest project we've had, so it's a very important project, and we should follow it closely. So it's very good that all of us are watching it and very interested in it, because those are tax dollars and money that could be used somewhere else. So we got to keep an eye on it. So we're glad it's going well. As everybody knows, and I guess it's a good thing we're right here talking about it, the project will end, they added a couple more weeks. It looks like it's going to end the end of June. Instead of ending in the middle of June, supposed to end next week, they asked for a couple more weeks. I know Joe said there's, because people ask me why, there's been some variables, material variables and different things related to just kind of a different type of year moving forward, but actually it's gone really well. And I know the residents on that street will be glad when it comes to a conclusion, and so will all of us. And Ray, I think under other business, I'll discuss a little bit about what
Okay.
we've talked with the mayor of Maple Heights about and stuff, just to kind of, okay. Is any other questions relating to item B, resolution 2021-14? Just to mention, the backup, be nice, it'd be good we get suspension for item A. I'd like to ask,
It has to be submitted in July, so.
what's that?
Item A has to be submitted in July.
Yeah, item A, Angela said has to be submitted in July. I think we kind of went through that everybody was
Right.
good with. I think Jennifer Allen, Council President, I think you kind of went through it, but I just kind of want to get through with everybody. Item B, we were asking for suspension on that.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I just want to ask Joe, with this county road preventative maintenance, is he still on?
Yeah.
Okay. What would be the purpose to use that $6,100 from that fund if it's going to shortchange us with the rest of Sagamore Road, or rather Dunham Road? I'm sorry, Dunham Road. Because my understanding was that $6,100 would be for that section, but I'm hearing that that's not true. So I just don't understand what the point is of bringing up the $6,100 if that would shortchange us and not give us material costs for all of Dunham Road to be redone with the preventative maintenance.
Mr. Mayor?
yeah, go ahead.
I think...
He's a little delayed
Well, he's,
anyway.
delayed. I think the reason is if, for example, something happens and Fabrizi had to use our contingency fund, then they can go to this fund per our resolution and use that $6,100 from the county to do the extension. So it's like a stopgap.
Right. And then the reason was to take less out of our general fund, basically out of our pockets.
Right.
You know, we were kind of covering it to say, okay, we're doing this smaller extension. This would be the worst scenario, you know, that you would be appropriating money for.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Jennifer, I think, and we'll see what Joe says, but the project is from Sagamore Road to Gorge Parkway, and depending if, let's say we use the contingency or we use it, either way, you know, that 22,000 doesn't go real far depending on how much you do. Like if we did some base repair, you know, for material, a bigger area and stuff, we might only end up doing a smaller area depending, you know what I mean? Depending on, I mean, we'd like to, you know, which we'll talk about under discussion about striping, but, because that's going to kind of fall in a
So that
different
wouldn't
thing.
be an actual guarantee if Dunham Road was worse. It wouldn't be an actual guarantee of covering all material costs.
Right. You're saying if it was worse than the shape it's in the other
Right.
part of it. The thing
Yeah, that's just our grant.
yeah,
That's all.
that. Did Joe have?
We will use contingency to allow for more funds available for the rest of Dunham.
Okay.
So that's, it is like, it's kind of, it's like a parachute in case we don't, you know, you guys are given basic authorization to use the other funding if needed. Okay. And if you have any more questions related to it before the next meeting, that's not a problem, we can answer it. Is everybody good with item B? Any residents or anybody else watching?
Those the only one that's been responding to me. No other questions.
Mr. Harkai, if you have something, don't hesitate to say something. You're part of being a resident here.
I'm not known for everything.
So I just want, you know, I'm not you know what I mean. Okay. Item C, Resolution 2021-15, Enter Refuge Rollover Year 2 with Kimball. I know Rob put out a letter to me because we did discuss that, and we've been discussing it for a couple of weeks, and I think it's important for me to, and council here too. we all know that our contract with Kimball this year has been kind of tough, and a little bit of last year. We've had people Kimball missing the recyclables, garbage, a lot of hit and miss, the Dunham Road area, the Notting Hill area. So when people have said to me, because we've talked about it, well, the performance hasn't been good, Mayor. You know, are you going to, you're exercising the last year of the contract. So I talked to Rob extensively about this for probably the last week or so, and I've also talked to other mayors who are in the consortium. And, you know, we're not the only community, and other companies are having the same problem, and it's employee related. So, but the problem is, we do feel, the consortium feels, and our street commissioner, who understands these contracts very well because it falls under his scope of work, feels that if we were to go out this year, we're going to see a big increase and still maybe have the same problem. Okay, but pay more. And the one reason is due to the recycling market. You know, countries outside of the United States where we ship most of our plastic are not taking the plastic anymore. The amount we received at Kimball and other refuge companies received for plastic has greatly reduced. So their prices for picking up recycling has increased. And there's been talk, and I've even been solicited for us to go outside the consortium, and we've talked about that, and we feel we will lose some strength with that, even though it hasn't been the consortium or outside, it's been other refuge companies telling me that. But I don't feel that way. I think we do better as a group with a little more power. We're a small community. If we were a larger community with a larger base and our contract was bigger, I think we might have a little more power there, you know, a little more bargaining. So I'm recommending, along with, as you think, with the recommendation from our, and I know Angela, as our fiscal officer, you know, she always has her ears out there when it comes to who's paying more and who's paying less. And I know you agree with this too, that we should exercise our last year, stick with the consortium, exercise our last year with Kimball. And the other thing is, and we'll just be honest with everybody, we always know the last year of your contract is usually the best year they perform for you. The first year, they perform pretty good because they want to keep you. If you signed a short-term contract, you sign a long-term contract, it doesn't matter. But the last year of any contract, knowing you're up for renewal, that's kind of when you get what you want. They will be up for renewal with the consortium after this year. So I don't know how everybody else feels. I did want Rob to put something in writing, which he did, with his recommendation, and because he's involved with the consortium.
And another point to make, Mayor, is that if we would be going out to bid for our own refuse, that we would have started that in January.
Yeah.
So, everyone was under the understanding last year in the consortium that when they rolled over, they were going to most likely roll over to that year too as well, so.
Not that we couldn't, but.
Well, to look now, though, is, we'll be into next year already by then.
But we're definitely going to, there's no doubt with talking to everybody, you will see an increase just because of the recyclables. There's just, be prepared, we're going to be paying more for trash removal in our next contract. Unless something changes with the recyclables out there. It's just, we're not shipping much, our country is not shipping a lot of plastic overseas. And that's where the big draw was overseas. They were buying our plastic to make products. So.
Mayor Colgraf?
Yes.
I just had one question. So with this rollover year, the seventh year, and the increase per ton that goes along with that, the residents portion, or what the residents pay through their county assessment, does not change. Is that correct?
I don't plan to change that.
No, we're
unless
not-
that was
we're not-
something you would
no.
be interested in.
Okay.
When we pass assessments in August, or review them in August, okay, I did not plan on increasing any.
Right. And what we passed in the budget, and going forward,
Right.
no. We had an increase last year, we didn't pass it on to the residents. So, I'm pretty sure I can speak for this body, I don't think we want to pass it on to the residents. I think we're able to absorb that increase this year. We're in the black. What is the difference?
I don't have any of that in front of me with the
Okay.
contract, I'm sorry.
We'll get that to everybody.
Yeah, I was trying to find, I had that document earlier today. It's a, I don't remember, I know it's 70 something, might be $76 per ton or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it is. But it would be nice if it just make it easier for us looking back that new price increase was included in this resolution as well. So just we have it on record what that is, cost per ton.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just
We
took
can-
the same legislation we passed last year, so we can always add it to here if we want. We didn't put it in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
put the existing amount with the increase. That's not a problem.
Mayor, we've got this up Friday.
Can you put your microphone over
There's
there?
a typo in the heading about year two. We're authorizing the mayor to enter into the rollover.
Oh, thank you,
Year
yeah.
two, and then there's also
Sorry.
in the section one, at the last sentence, it should be year two of the contract.
Got it, thanks.
Just, kind of threw it together at last, it's my bad, I should have.
And just in case the residents were to ask who the consortium is Bedford Heights, us in Orange Village. You guys know that, but just in case the residents are, curious. Yes?
I have a comment about Kimball. They don't know you have to go. Sometimes Kimball picks up the trash on Alexander Road when there's lots of traffic. It creates a big hazard. And if they could arrange their schedule to do their services when they know there's going to be the least amount of traffic, that would certainly be very helpful for lots of people.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the residents for
No.
item C? I was glad to see this weekend, because we had trash pickup because of Memorial Day, one day later. I didn't get any complaints, so I'm hoping, and Rob, I met with Rob today early, and unless you guys heard, I haven't heard that anybody didn't get picked up. So that was very, very nice to hear. So we made many complaints to them, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
when we consider another contract with the recyclables, I know you stated that they're having a trouble sending our recyclables overseas, which I find kind of disheartening that the United States has to send their recyclables overseas to get processed. Can we have a contract without recyclables? I mean,
That increases your trash. The whole point of recyclables for all the cities back in the day was to start decreasing. the-
That's back in the day. Apparently,
Yeah.
that's not like that anymore, and the recyclables is the factor that's going to increase our garbage. And I'm all for recyclables, but if the federal government I mean, in my opinion, they should put their money where their mouth is and help the communities recycle. If they're into global warming and all that stuff and recycling, they should do something about it, rather than the United States having to send their recyclables overseas, and when overseas doesn't want them, they've got no place to put them. Where do you think Kimball and everybody else is going to put them? They're going to go into a trash heap, and we're going to pay more to do that.
Right. And my point, Brian, because I'm not really sure what the point was when I said that, whether or not it's because they're processing or it's because they were buying the plastic to manufacture something on their own. I don't know if that, you see what I'm saying? It's not
I
that
understand.
you know what I mean? It could be
Oh,
what
I
you say
understand.
too. But
There's dynamics going on here that the
Right.
federal government should help the communities and help the United States with recycling, and not depend on other countries
right. No, you're right.
to purchase it.
So, but to get back to the contract, that is something we need to, the consortium is going to look at
Right.
those options because they're in the same boat we are. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, so it's a good, that's a good point, you know, to,
Right.
because if Kimball's throwing it in with the general trash and charging us, what's the difference if me or you just throw it in general
Right,
trash?
that's
and
my
no back?
point.
That's your,
If we're
that's your
paying
exact
for it-
point. I understand.
Exactly.
That's your exact
Cleveland,
point.
that's what Cleveland's doing, and I know Kimball got back to us and said they're not doing that.
Right.
But
that's,
if nobody's taking their recyclables, they got to do something with it.
right.
Have you, as residents, received a new list of what is recyclable lately? Because I feel like my mom's got Kimball and Brooklyn Heights, and there's a lot less on that list to put
No,
in the
we haven't.
recycle bin.
You're right.
No, we
Her and
haven't.
I have been having a discussion about that. I got Waste Management in Seven Hills, and she said, I'm not allowed to recycle this anymore, look at the list. And I said, aha. So I'm wondering if they're trying to also maybe start paring down on what's going to go into the recyclables.
Because if I'm not mistaken, what we recyclable is also in our contract. I'm
That could
almost pretty
be.
sure.
That could
So the
be.
renewal of the contract might change that too.
That could be,
Mhm.
yeah.
But that, you know, right, Brian, that's exactly what is going on in some communities, especially communities that do their own
Right.
trash. Which there is, you know, there's quite a few that do. The larger, of course, larger communities.
Right.
Is everybody okay though with item C?
With those changes.
And we'll make those changes. And just to make it clear again, there will be no cost no increase to the residents.
Correct.
Right, everybody agree with that? Okay. Okay, so that would be for suspension 2. Right. Is there any questions from residents on the computer?
Not yet.
Okay. Ordinance D, ordinance 2021-12, that's the revised 260 payroll ordinance. I'm going to let Angela talk a little bit to that after I just make a few comments related to that. And Angela, you can correct me too and stuff. As the residents know, council and the administration gave all employees a 1.5% raise for 2021. And some people, we do have in our ordinance 260 as public employees, that their pay scale is there. Okay? So if that person was at the top of their pay scale, let's say their pay scale was $24, and our ordinance says $24 is the top pay for that position, and they got a 1.5% increase, now they're outside of that ordinance. And the auditor doesn't look favorably on that. So this is a housekeeping item that we have to widen that range. There's no increase, the employee got their 1.5%. One employee isn't getting more than the other because they're over their range. The range just gets widened to accommodate that, to keep 260 in line in what each employee is making. Is that?
That is correct. So we had already approved the raises, they had already happened, they were retroactive, and this is housekeeping so that when American Legal Publishing updates our info soon for ordinances passed, this will go in there. And I can review with you, I updated the sheets just for year one. The increase was about $1,376 over what he was at 91,000.
The 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5%. So that's where that landed. I figure we'll revisit that each year, that one, if that's fine, because we may have more to do next year. Now for auxiliary police officer, mechanic, building secretary clerk, and mayor's court clerk, I already factored in what would be the next 3 years potentially. So if we end up agreeing in these next couple of years to do the same increases that the CBA had, which we may or may not, we're now covered in that top range for those positions. So that's why I increased those to where they're at. That factored in the current raise and then potentially 2 more. So,
It doesn't mean you have to
so we
do
don't have to
anything.
keep passing all these every year. We don't have to keep revisiting all these every year. It doesn't mean they're going to get it exactly or that same percent, but it's in there and covered just in case, because they were already creeping over the top with this last increase, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Angela, that was going to be my first question, so instead of having a question, thank you very much for having that foresight and in padding that a little bit more so we don't have to revisit it every year. I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
And we've done this before. We've done this quite a few times. I think we did it just,
19 was the last time we had to do it for a couple positions as well.
yeah, because those people got a raise and they were outside of the 260. So we had to keep it,
Doesn't change the starting rates. That would be a discussion that we'd all have if we ever wanted to increase starting rates or change starting rates. This just made their top wage higher, their top range higher in case they were already almost maxed out.
the only other thing you can do to avoid that, okay, is somebody, you call it redlining, they meet the max, and then they get a check for 1 year for that percentage. That's not an uncommon practice. I mean, if council wanted to do that. What it does, though, that person eventually, you could fall, that person could, get stuck. There's a lot of ways to look. I don't want to get into the pro because we're not doing it, but that is a way that the private businesses do that a lot.
Yeah, if we don't want to keep adjusting it.
Yeah, if you don't want to keep adjusting it and you say then you certainly don't want to ever deny anybody a raise. Okay, if you're giving everybody a raise, but just because someone's maxed out, you can say, but what you could give them is they would get a lump sum. They would just get a check for that increase, and they just call that redlining. They topped out now, and now you just give you take the 1.5% of their gross, and they get a one-time check, but then they don't bill. You know what I mean? They get the same check next year. They get the same amount till you change it. I mean, you could give a different increase, but you know what I'm saying? If the increase was always 1.5, that amount would be the same, even 10 years later. That's why there's a lot of people don't like, I'm only saying that, I don't agree with that. I think the way you're doing it is the right way. Some people do it if there's large increases. 1.5%, we've been fortunate to give an increase this year to all the employees, but I don't think my opinion is not enough to redline anybody.
Redline hard.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing out there if there was ever discussion on it or another option. You do see it out there. I don't know about a municipality. I can't.
Mayor Qualigraph?
Yes.
If I may comment, the redlining point that you brought up, can be used for municipal government if someone is at the top of the pay scale and just happen to be maybe out of line with with the area, so to speak. That would be, perhaps, we're leaders of the pack in a certain group of employees. I'm not saying we are. I mean, I think that would be the time to take a look at, okay, are we within the normal salary range for that person? So redlining can be used. I'm not suggesting it is to be used, but it can be if, under certain circumstances.
I think, right, and with that said, I think if we were to ever go do that, I think we would want to do an evaluation.
Absolutely.
And which isn't a bad thing to do. I know we had it done a few years ago, probably more than a few years ago, so we might be coming up on that to do an evaluation, see where are we competitive with the communities our size. Last time we were, so we can do that same thing. And that's probably what we would do if we were, I would suggest, and I'm sure this body would agree, that if we were to talk about that or go in that direction, that we should at least see where we are. That's what you're saying, right? Are we competitive with the other communities our size?
Right. I think it's good to do that every, X number of years, especially as jobs change, as expectations, job qualifications change. Sometimes mergers of positions change and people are doing multiple things that they didn't do before. So it's all, every 5 years or so, a classification and compensation analysis or study is always a good thing. You may find out you have employees that are underpaid
Right.
when you do that, so.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just a question, I'm looking on the second page, one of these, one of our employees, there's a range of $15 to now $23. And we've always been very good, it doesn't matter who the mayor is, they've always been very good at saying, hey, I'd like to bring this person in and bring them in at this amount of money. What does concern me a little bit about extending these ranges, and I know why we're doing it, and I will vote for this. We've hired a personnel outfit to come in and help us clean up our policies and procedures for things like employee evaluations and incremental raises and things like that, to put those more in a solid policy and procedure manual. In the past, we were lacking in that. So what I want to make sure is happening is that we do have these policies and procedures in place. For example, this one position I'm looking at, it's the mayor. Mayor is the hiring authority. So the mayor can technically really hire somebody brand new at $22 an hour, as opposed to the $15 an hour. That's within their jurisdiction to do right now. I'd like to see policies put into place that there's not a wide variance of hiring at different ranges with it, or at different pay scales within this range. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
To have a more of a consistent,
I've been involved in the
yeah,
process.
to have more of a consistent policy of where you start at, where any employee starts at in this pay range.
But here, let me just tell you what's happened since I've been here, and we hired your partner in HR. Okay. I didn't know any of the employees. They went to Indeed. Okay. Your partner in HR went to Indeed, put out the job description with the range, and then reviewed the applicants. And then came back and says, I got whatever, 3 applicants. Here's the ones I feel the best fit. Then when we narrowed them down, or picked that one, that same person, our representative from HR Partners, said, okay, I think we should start here, but she bases that, or whoever, she's a her, but that company bases that, and this is the thing about setting a fixed thing, on experience too.
Right.
You know what I mean? You got to be a little flexible. They always normally try to start in the middle of the road, of course. That's where, any HR always, that's the beginning where they start unless somebody's really entry level. But they start in the middle of the road and then they have a little bit to give, because you always want some room for growth.
Well, I understand that. I'm just saying
how it worked now. If you want to put something in.
No, I
you don't
understand
wanna-
that. I'm just saying that should be a written policy that, and you're doing that for department heads. We're not doing that for entry level or somebody that we're hiring. We're not doing that for all employees. We're hiring them at the lower end of the scale. And I understand that depending on their knowledge or skills, what their experience is, that you might want to bring somebody in at the higher end of the scale. But that should be a written policy that we can do that. You see what I'm getting at? That rather than having it, I don't want to say haphazard, because it's not haphazard, but you don't want to have, what I don't want to have is these wide ranges and have, okay, well, I just hired an administrative assistant at $20 an hour at the top of the scale right away. Where, things like that. And I know we've never had that problem, and I don't want to portray that we have, but I think that our partners in HR should be tasked to write a hiring policy that we can say, no, this is how we do this.
Well, let's say you put a range in there. And I'm just being the devil's advocate, because it doesn't, and I will say one thing about us as a small community and a small staff. Most of our people are pretty much specialized. They really are. I mean, our service department, in 260 we've outlined almost all the employees pretty much with a job description. There's not a lot of real entry level besides our seasonal park help. A lot of it, you look at, you got the clerk of courts, you got administrative assistant, you got Lisa who falls, secretary / building assistant, there's, that's a skilled position. Then you get in the police department, you get into the service department, they're pretty much, they're skilled tradesmen. You think, Brian, and that's a good question, and that's something what we should do is talk to HR partners and
Yeah, maybe that, I'm just throwing it out. I'm
the
not
only thing
saying
is,
that's...
if you put amount in there, so let's say you put amount in there and you say, okay, it's the middle of the range, no one starts higher than the middle of the range, okay? So there you are, you're the department head or your HR partners, you're the HR department, and you have somebody with a lot of experience. They actually, maybe we're making your max here or more than your middle, and you're competing for them, but now you're locked in. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I just know from the last,
Mr. Mayor.
You don't always get such a big pool of people. Yes.
I kind of feel like you do, is that we've always had good discussions as far
Right.
as the
Oh, yeah.
hiring. And I know where you're going with this, but once you start putting, ranges out there, you are kind of locked in. And I think we should have HR partners talk about it and maybe present something or whatever, but I don't think there should be anything we just don't know, because as the mayor just said, they could have been making more at another community and even take a pay cut to come here. And then we have to offer even $2 or $3 less because we have legislation put into place. Then we've tied our hands behind our back. So we've already got the issue that they're making more than what we have in 260. So how are we going to get them? if we really want them. What other kind of negotiations? I think it allows us to negotiate by not putting something out there that's definitive. I could be all right, just my opinion.
But I think it comes back to what we discussed earlier. If you feel your range is competitive, okay,
Yeah.
so let's say, okay, director of the service department. Let's say we go back, we say, okay, hey, we haven't looked at that pay scale for 5 years. So we have a company like HR Partners or whoever to look at that, and they say, okay, from here to here, you guys are competitive. So now you know that range is competitive, you're already okay there, Brian. I think that's really what it comes back to.
Well, yeah.
We have to confirm that our
I don't want
ranges are good.
Right, I don't want to tie our hands at all, and I agree
Right.
with you, Anne
That's
Mary.
the only
but
thing
I don't
I'm
want to
saying.
tie our hands in negotiating with somebody, a quality person. I'm just, I don't know, maybe your partner in HR they can maybe vocalize it better than I can, but it's...
Better than me.
Just, I see these ranges and I fully understand for department heads and specialized people and things like that. It's just that I want to, and we've always had good discussion. Doesn't matter who the mayor is, we've always had, throughout my tenure here, we've always had good discussion, an open discussion on it. I just want to, put something in place that helps keep that from happening. Let's say a mayor or somebody else hires their buddy and puts them at the top of the pay scale. It's just a style, just a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Safety
Just
guard?
Just a safety measure for, to ensure the residents that, hey, we have a policy for hiring, unless it's a special person that has a special skill that we are negotiating. And I know you're exactly right, if the pay ranges are within the range, but we've got a wide range from $10 to $12, that's not a range, it's a $2 a range, but from, here's, $15, here's $25 to $35 an hour, that's a lot of money a year. So, I don't know, maybe they have an idea, maybe they don't, or maybe I'm just barking up the wrong tree.
No. The important thing is, which I see, because, no, you're right. You can have corruption anywhere, okay?
Oh, yeah.
That you know. But the key is you got to be comfortable with your ranges. Because those ranges should be reflective of that job to be
Right.
competitive. Okay? I'm going to tell you what I think you're going to find. Just remember, I think when you do the research, just comes from what we know from the past, that we're probably on the low end.
Oh, we are.
Last time
most
we were in the
people.
middle. So you're going to find that even if we put people at the high end of those ranges, that range should be expanded. But the big thing is, none of those ranges should be outside of that realm, at least how I feel. So in other words, let's say somebody did go to the top of the wage. That top of that wage should be the top of the wage for somebody with that skill set in that position. And that way, if they go to the top of that, okay, they are being paid
Sure.
what the market bears. So I guess what we would need to do is, if we're in agreement that we want to put out and get that, I'll share some, and you guys can too, Lori always welcomes our HR partner calls, but I'll share this conversation because it's a great conversation with her, and she can probably even do some preliminary research. We might not even have to go to that big thing. She might do that as part and give us, if it's outside of her scope for things, not their work, but outside of our contract, maybe see if you guys, if it's a small amount, we'll go forward with that. We need to do that anyways. I think we're all in agreement. Does everybody feel comfortable with me? And then if it's depending on what it is, I'll let you know, if it's a small figure, but. So I will breach that with her. And I've been approached by the employees for the same thing. Some employees feel that they'd like to know where they fall compared to other communities of their size. Because that's the thing, you have to also compare it. You know, we all know, I mean, different things. You go downtown, that was kind of common, you get paid a little more than if you're in the suburbs, or, you know, some communities always pay more, they have more money, and it just, but there is a way. Okay. Are we okay with item D, though?
Yeah.
A great conversation, because I think we are due. Angela, do you know when we did the survey last?
I don't know when you would have last done the survey, no.
I think it was like at least 5 years
I
ago.
know
huh?
Lori's going
Yeah.
on vacation this next couple of weeks, but we can touch base with her, and she'll be back to me here on the 29th, so, yeah, we can have her start looking at that. I mean, every city's different. Some people are all union, all across the board, the city too, and so then they're locked in anyway by their union rates.
It was
So-
2017.
Yeah,
What's time?
So 4 years.
yeah,
So it would be coming up if you do a 5-year cycle.
yeah.
And that's about pretty common, I think. I'm not sure, but we can ask Lori. That's probably a common in the industry. Okay. Good. Angela, did you have anything to add to that? As far as the ordinance goes, or anything else?
No, not as far as the ordinance itself.
Okay. So that would be for suspension too. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, I know last COW meeting last week, we talked about, any questions from any residents relating to that item?
No.
Before we move on, anybody? Okay. Item 5, so that does it for the ordinances and the resolutions. So we'll have those on the next council meeting next week. Item 5 is discussion regarding pavement markings for the village. I think we've pretty much all kind of answered this. I just need some direction. I know we talked about it. I think one of the questions was whether we do part of the village or all the village. I know the number of 50,000 came out. Me and Rob, and I did talk to Joe a little bit today about it. And Rob, when we first talked, well, he was at the meeting last time. He wasn't so sure about all the village. Now he feels, he took a pretty good look that we should do all the village.
It's been 8 years since you've done it. To
2014.
alternate.
Well, we've done some in between there, but I mean, not the whole village.
We haven't done anything since 14 at all.
Well,
That's the last
actually,
strike.
some of our roads have been repaved since.
Only whatever you would have had repaved, that's it.
Right, so they've been,
But you were on an alternating schedule for striping before, of doing part, and then
Right.
the next year part, and then backtrack. So it has been a while.
based on money. That's why we cut it back to get us all in line. So with that said, I guess the question is, if we're in agreement with, you know, paving it, because I asked Joe, I said, because I would need, we don't need legislation to go out for bids. We need legislation to accept the bid. But we certainly don't want to go out for bids if we're not seriously looking at it. So I said to Joe, what would be the amount? And he said anywhere from 50 to 60,000. He thinks it would be closer to the 50,000, but we just want to be upfront with it, you know, talk about it, so if the bids come back, you know, because if we say, hey, we don't want to make that expenditure of $50,000 to $60,000, well, there's no sense in having them put a bid package together and putting it out for bid.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think we would need to discuss also if we're going to go ahead and put a bid out on this county road preventative,
Well, he would do that at the same time.
because that would stripe Dunham, Egbert, and Sagamore also.
Correct.
Right.
You know, so if we had one company that was doing this, the other company that's striping the rest of the village would not need to do Dunham, Egbert, and Sagamore.
Yeah, he did say he would include that, and then the material. Let's see, Joe, are you there? Would you be able to explain how you would incorporate the county road program, the funding for materials with a bid for all the striping of the roads?
Mr. Mayor, I will say after last week's meeting, driving home, there was virtually no stripes on the road on Alexander. And Angela, I'm sure you see that at night.
Oh, yeah.
But it most especially hit me last week.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question we know it needs to be done. It's no different than the roads. We're all approached, do you know this road is bad, why aren't you paving it? We all know it needs to be paved. It's not because we don't want to do it, it's about the funding. No, I know, I'm just referring to the roads. We get questioned as council and mayor on that all the time.
Mayor Colograph?
Yes.
While we're waiting for Mr. Gelati, Joe Gelati, I just want to make a comment. I understand the need for the striping, but when we're talking $50,000 that was not budgeted for, and I'm curious, how do we, in the middle of a year, how do we prioritize unbudgeted, unfunded projects? We have had a lot of discussion about secondary and residential roads. There are some roads that you can't put a stripe on because they are that crumbled. So I'm just curious, if we're looking at main roads, there's some of our residential roads, in all honesty, you cannot stripe because until you do a repair. So I hope Mr. Gelati can kind of share what his vision might be. And then I'm just curious, what's the typical prioritization process when we bring items to the table in the middle of a budget cycle?
Just to clarify, this was discussion, so it's nothing, if you don't want to go out for bids. I would suggest, and I thought it did go back to the infrastructure committee and invite Joe and decide whether or not what roads you want to do, or if you want to do all of them. I guess that would be, and that's what you're saying, Ray. So why don't you can do that.
Well, yeah, part of I think what I'm saying is if in the road maintenance program, some of those roads are going to be striped, that's understandable. I guess what I'm really saying is in June of 2020, we kind of talked about it's really time to be budgeting for 2021. It's time to be budgeting for 2022, and how do you prioritize or bring a potential $50,000 program in the middle of the season, in the middle of the budget cycle, when it's really, I guess the other thing is, when we whether we're talking about road striping or other things, there's a what's the risk versus the reward, and then where does the resource come from? So it's we did not budget $50,000 or up to $50,000 for road striping, and it's just puzzling to me how we get there, how do we make those resources available in the middle of a budget cycle?
Let me answer the question, first of all, how we got the project here. First, it's not me bringing the project to the table. Item 5 is discussion, because it was brought up in our last COW meeting,
right,
that council requested discussion on paving the village, so that's where we're at.
Striping.
When we budget for it, we can budget for it at any time. We don't have to do it this year, you can do it next year. I think, to be honest with you, Ray, I really, now thinking about it, because you are right, and we all know that. The side, you're thinking the side part, the berm markers. There is some areas that putting the white berm lines you can't do because of the crumbling. But as far as the safety of the center lines, there's no doubt that those should be there, and they all need to be visible. And we're pretty far past that. So that's why item 5 is discussion. I might have maybe jumped the gun by saying, do you want to go out for bids? Maybe misinterpreted that. I'm just kind of putting things forward because I was thinking, we're missing July and August there. But I think with that said, I think probably, and this isn't just, I think what we should do is we'll task Joe to look at the roads that need to be specifically done, that need the most, whether it's all or not, and decide. And Angela, we can look at where we're at too.
Yes, and I will look back. My correspondence with Joe early on when we started to forecast for regular road projects as well, we did discuss striping. So I'll look at my emails and our conversation and see if, we had already maybe even touched base on prioritizing those. And if not, Joe and I will go back and he will look into what would be priority, obviously.
I guess that's why maybe it is a good thing to go back to the road committee and the infrastructure committee, and I'll say why. We do know we have the grant for the county road reimbursement program, okay? So we have that for materials, all right? So I think what we need to decide, what hasn't been put forward is what is the labor going to be on that. Okay, I don't know, Joe, if you're listening, if you have an idea. So I think we need to establish that, I'm sure. So we would need to say, okay, so we do nothing outside of just what the grant is. So there's going to be a labor amount associated with that. So that, because we might say, okay, we're not going to do all the village, but we're definitely going to use the grant money and do the roads that are described in the grant. Which is Dunham Road, Sagamore Road to Gorge Parkway, Egbert Road, Dunham Road to the East Corporation Limit, and Sagamore Road, West Corporation Limit to Northfield Road. I think we're all in agreement that we have that $63,000, and we're going to do that, exercise that, okay? So I guess we need to see what the labor will be for that, and then make a determination on, see what that amount is and whether or not we move forward. But at the same time, we need to see where we are budget-wise, because the two are going to go together.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The schedule that Joe gave us back in November shows every other year, 1 year being the entire village being restriped at a cost of approximately $50,000, and then the second year just the main roads being striped at approximately $25,000. So that is, and I know it's an estimate from him, but I would like to see if the infrastructure committee would get together and decide. I do think it's a safety issue, especially on our main roads. Like I said, going home from here, from Alexander, my section of Alexander past Dunham, you see nothing at night. The glass beads are completely gone. And just the other thing I'd like to ask the infrastructure committee to keep in mind too is this can't be done during inclement weather. This can't be done in the winter time or anything else like that.
I think we've done it in September. I think Brian and...
You could do it.
Yeah, usually it's done in the fall.
You could do it in
Usually
the
done in
fall.
the fall, yeah.
You could do it in the fall. I used to sell the glass beads and the paint
So you know.
when I was at Sherwin-Williams, yes. But that's something that we need to keep in mind, and, what the infrastructure committee would like to come up with as a suggestion for it. I would like to see something done with some of our roads. We need to. And I know we are getting in a better spot in the black fiscally, so that needs to also obviously be part of the discussion, but.
We are going to, as I mentioned earlier, just in the back of the head, we are going to discuss in executive session the sale of land. there might be some added money to our budget there. So I think that's something we need to look at, the combination of the two.
Mr. Mayor?
Doesn't put the bodies on anymore, just.
That's okay.
Everybody knows.
Denny, did you want to, are you okay? Brian, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say real quickly that I would suggest the Infrastructure Committee, which I am on, have a meeting with Mr. Gelati under the auspices of prioritization of which roads we would do, and I'm in full agreement with Councilman Whedon that there are some roads that it's not at this time, it would be throwing good money after bad,
Yeah.
really. And we have a list, I don't have it with me, but of the roads that are in poor condition and things like that, and Mr. Whedon has it. And,
Yeah, it was in your
these
packet.
roads, Mr. Gelati can take a look at these, and I'm sure we could come up with a recommendation for putting out for bid the roads that are in most need of striping from a safety standpoint, and that would probably be much less than the $50,000 mark. I would presume, and look at again what we're doing with what we currently have on the table, and then bring that forward to council.
Yeah, get a consensus from the
From the
road
committee.
committee, your recommendation,
Right.
and bring it to council, and then council decides whether they want
Thank
to
you.
follow the recommendation or not.
Yeah. Mayor Colograph, while Mr. Hawkeye is making his way to the microphone, one of the reasons I asked a question about prioritization and how this council make budget adjustments in the middle of the year, because, I don't remember all of the items, the other potential capital expenditure items that might have been talked about prior to the 2021 budget that did not make it into the budget. And if we're, before we, although this could be very much a safety concern with the striping, what about the status of some of these other projects or expenditures, whether it be equipment and things like that, that we did not fund in the 2021. That's why I asked a question about prioritization, because some things are already, so maybe we have to wait. Let's bring all of those back to the table and see where we are. What's most important? I mean, what can we do with some of those other items? I don't know what they are. I don't remember. Mr. Harkar.
Prior to the comments from Councilman Whedon and Councilman Spitznagel, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Some of the roads are so bad and crumbled on the side that it would be a total waste of money to try to stripe them. And Hickory, Tulip, and Chestnut are good examples of that. There's just chunks of paper.
What about the center line?
Well, I mean, if you're going the right direction, have somebody take a look at it, and I think that's the right thing to do. Somebody should look at the roads and see the roads that are suitable for that project to make the project be a success and they can worth our money to do it. I was going to say the same thing that both of you said and that you're saying as well. It could well be that after you review all of that, that it wouldn't cost nearly the amount of money that, trying to do the whole village would be. That's a good move. Also, I noticed at the park, I don't like to throw anybody under the bus, but whoever did the markings in the park, up there by the parking lot, he painted right over loose gravel, weeds and everything else. And to me, that's a waste of our money to see a project done with that kind of craftsmanship. In my opinion, I'm not a contractor, I don't do that kind of work, but I think somebody should at least take a blower and blow all the gravel away before they went ahead and painted up the markings. So you can take a look at it and see for yourself. I don't think we got our money's worth out of that project. And that's just in the park. I didn't see the whole job that was done, but that to me was a disappointing result. Also, while we're talking about striping, the racetrack needs to be restriped. And when that happens, I'd like to be down there to make sure that the project is done up to the right, let's say, speed.
Pardon the pun. Pardon the pun.
Yes, pardon the pun. Those are my comments.
All right.
I hate to see us wasting our money on something that's just not done well.
And that's what we try not to do. We've been very conservative, and I will continue to be that way. Okay, then, so I guess the suggestion is to take those items to the Infrastructure Committee. Denny, as chairman, you have those items that need to be discussed?
Yes.
Okay. Then whenever you and your committee, and then bring it to council, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, I don't think Joe's on anymore. I'll share with Joe our discussion, get the ball rolling. Also with Rob, because he's a big part of that too. He works with Joe closely. And have them evaluated as safety concerns versus, whether or not they, so we'll go from there. To answer, I guess, Angela, we can look at some of the things and meet. I meet once a month, the last Thursday of the month, with the department heads. I can share our discussion with them on some capital items that they felt we took out. We do know that the dump truck in service is one that our service director is concerned about. And just to see if we can kind of all round table if there's anything more than that we feel is an expenditure that needs to be looked at. So we have our budget review. We're going to talk about the expenditure striping, make sure there isn't nothing that trumps that. Or we say, okay, hey, it comes back with this much. Do we want to expand some striping to some roads who are on the border maybe, but we don't want to do them because we're going to put it towards another capital expense. So I will make that a point to discuss that with the department. Yeah, Rob will be on vacation, my next one, but we'll get with him after that.
Mayor, do we have a meeting next week?
Your council meeting, we have a council.
Should we have an infrastructure meeting at that time?
Yeah, well, Danny, why don't you discuss it with your members and whatever works for them, and just let myself or Angela know before we put the agenda out, so we can get also a link and everything to Angela. So you don't have to say it tonight. You can talk about it with your members. Unless you want to make a decision tonight, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, okay.
You have time, is what I'm letting you know. So if you maybe you want to make it at 5 o'clock, maybe you want to make it at 6, depending on how much you need. Plus, you probably want to make sure you talk to Joe, because I know you mentioned you'd like to invite Joe Gelati, so you want to make sure he's available.
Yeah.
Rob won't be available because Rob is going on vacation. But I think Joe's going to be the key because he puts that summary together. So. Any questions from residents? Okay. Item 6. This also came out of the last week's COW meeting by Councilwoman Jennifer Allen. Rob and Lisa did put these together. So I don't know. I'll let you, Jennifer, if you want to talk about that, because I know you had some insight with that, or talk to Rob about it. So if you want to go from there. This is another one for discussion that was brought up by a councilperson. So they're in front of you. Rob didn't discuss a real lot with me. Besides, he at least puts this together. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I was asking Rob about how our fees and permits are in line with similar communities, and if you would have a chance to pull together our fees versus a couple of communities that are similar in size to us. He pulled from Bentleyville and Valley View, and he has a full listing of all of our fees. Actually, I didn't think Rob would have this soon. I thought we would be having this discussion after we come back.
Which is okay,
From summer
which is
break.
okay.
Yeah, but it will give you guys an idea. I mean, I was going through it today to see some of our fees, we are woefully low on compared to other communities, and some of them, you know, are really good. One of the things is, let's see. Okay, just like an accessory structure. We have $2 per every 100 square feet, whereas Bentleyville has over 200 square feet, it's 30 cents for every square foot. Their fee would be $90, ours would be $6 on top of the $25 base fee. So something to look at. I'd really rather have Rob here to go through this stuff also. But it was something that I thought we all need to have an idea too of what our fees are for commercial and residential.
Okay.
Joe did respond before, we will assess striking and road needs with infrastructure committee as discussed. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Concerning these fees, I did look at these, and as Councilwoman Allen said, I color-coded mine. I had nothing better to do. But I think in colors, so I can just look at this. Some of these are, as she said, some of them were low on, some of them were high on. And we're kind of, I've got equal colors, and so we're kind of 50% of the time we're higher, 50% of the time we're lower. One thing I did notice, though, concerning our permit fees, and now this might be just the way Bentleyville and Valley View do theirs, but we have apparently, by the list, a lot more fees for a lot more things.
Yeah.
Unless they co-locate some of their fees within, like HVAC or electrical, something like that.
Where they're more inclusive.
Where they're more inclusive. I would, and I don't know really how we do this, and this would be a question for Rob, but we have, like, for example, let's say somebody's redoing their kitchen. We have a kitchen hood fee, we've got an exhaust fan fee, we've got each outlet fee. I would like to see, and I understand that if they have those in there for somebody just doing a small project, but I'm wondering if there's a way, let's say somebody's redoing their entire kitchen, remodeling their kitchen. One permit fee for that remodel, period, and that covers everything they do, whether it's electrical or plumbing or what have you, for that, rather than nickel and diming and all of a sudden, you know, you're up several $100s or more for doing an addition onto your house.
That was one of the questions that I had for Rob, because like an interior alteration for the village is $5 per 100 square feet on top of the $25 fee. Plus whatever else there may be for electrical or plumbing and things like that. Valley View is $145, period. You know, and my wondering is, my thought process or my curiosity with this is, first of all, are our fees in line with other similar communities? And is there a better way that it could be done? Such as possibly, you know, with a flat fee, just make it easier. Does Rob need to count out, okay, there's 9 outlets in this kitchen remodel, you know, things like that. So that's why I didn't think he would get this information.
Yeah.
Because when I asked him, he looked at me like, well, what? I'm going on vacation. And I told him, you know, not until we come back from the summer, you know, it's fine. But that's why I wanted, you know, really like to have him here to talk with.
Right.
And the other thing that needs to be done to make this complete is the amount of permits.
I'm sorry, what?
The amount of permits.
Right.
Okay, if you have a very small number of permits, even though you have a large list, it doesn't make it complicated.
Right.
What makes it complicated if you have a large list with a large percentage of permits compared to a lot of permits with a small list. But let's say some of these items you never issue. I mean, yeah, it's taken up. You see what I'm saying? It's all relative to, you know, how much you want to change and how much we want him to spend.
Right.
You know, what.
Well, I'll be the first to
So I
admit-
guess I would want to know what, in a year, what permits are pulled.
Right.
And how.
Well, and going by that, I'll be the first to admit, I read some of these, and I had no idea we needed a permit for this or permit for that. I mean, things that, you know, I'll be honest, well, self-disclosure here, if I changed an electrical outlet in my house, I'm not going to come to the village.
Well,
I'm
that's what
sorry.
I saw. I thought, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and I believe most people aren't, even if they hire a contractor to do it, the contractor's not going to come in and pull a permit, and the electrician's not going to come in and pull a permit to change an electrical outlet. I'd be willing to bet that. So I don't know how, I understand the basis for this, and I also, just getting on my soapbox just for a minute, and everybody knows this, we had our air conditioning system. We have a couple air conditioning systems in our house. And we pulled the permits and everything, did everything as we should. And the guy came out, and I was fully expecting to let him in my house so he could look at the installation of everything. He said, no, I don't need to do that. And he just walked out, looked at the condenser, but 2 minutes later came back with a green tag and said, here you go, you're done. And I said, well, don't you want to come in and look at how they installed it? He said, no, I don't need to do that. Okay. Turns out they installed one of our systems, our filter systems, upside down and backwards. And I'm the one that found it. Now, if the village is going to be in the business of charging for permits under the auspices of you're getting a permit so we can look at it and make sure that that install is correct, that contractor is doing the appropriate job, we need to make sure we're
Getting our money's worth.
Exactly. We're, you know, holding up our end of the bargain on that, and rather than just a money grab from people that want to do something with their house. And so I'm, you know, dead set that if we're going to be doing this stuff, we need to do our part to ensure that that install is in fact correct. That's my soapbox for tonight. I'll get down now.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, like I said, I'd really like to know if Rob prefers, I mean, we've got 4 full legal pages, well, not 4 full, but,
Well, you got to remember, he's not, I think what they said, remember for Valley View and Bentleyville, I don't know if you have the commercial end.
no.
No.
So you got 4 here, but
Right, that's
one
what
is
I'm
ours
saying.
is commercial,
For the
so
village.
we got to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. But we still have more,
Right.
you know, compared to our residential side shows more, you know, on both of them.
Sure. But again, you know, if Rob was here, I would like to know, the Valley View, we've got 1 page, and it appears it's for everything, commercial and residential. And that just makes everything easier for him and Lisa, you know, and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff I'd like to discuss, but I'm fine with it until after summer break when Rob can be here.
Yeah, that's fine. Anything we can get a little more together and a little more research on it too. Does anybody else have any more discussion for of the fee structure for the permits?
Maybe we need the bundle.
What's that?
Maybe we need the bundle.
There you go.
We're going to slide down to that.
I will tell you, though, a time, just if I may take a minute, I will tell you a time when the permitting system did work. We had our basement waterproofed, and it was Mr. Voros that came out, and he said, you need to put visqueen over these rocks. And he says, I never put visqueen. He said, well, you do in Walton Hills. And he was upset, but Our building inspector made him go out and do that. And so, it does work, but we need to ensure that it does work all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gonna shatter your house for any trucks in your driveway, Brian.
Any discussion from any residents or anybody on item number 6? Is council good to proceed from item 6? Okay. So we'll continue that discussion on item 5 and under 6 and item 6 as we go forward. I got a few things here for other business. I did mention to you that we're going to have an executive session if council's okay with that, and that would, as of right now, that would be for economic development, update for the sale and purchase of land. That related to, that's the economic thing, sale and purchase of land. It'd be for the sale of land, not the purchase of land, the sale of land. Litigation, pending litigation, and also employment. Let's see. The thing with what might come out of that is, so I just want to throw it out there to look at your schedule, and you'll understand all this, but it's just something so we could maybe have an answer on the 15th or even sooner. If we needed to have a special meeting to execute legislation, would anybody be available? What is it, the 29th and the 30th?
It's a Tuesday, yes.
Yes. So if you can look at your schedule, schedule's the 29th, or we can go on the 30th, or we can go even later, but the sooner the better, and you'll understand all that after it's shared with you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd just like to say right now, I leave my Tuesdays open, so that for me is the easiest day. It's usually
Okay.
the other 4 days a week that I'm working.
I'd like everybody to be, if we can, it'd be good to have everybody be there. Because if we have to vote on something, so. I do, let's see. We already talked about the meetings. I know watching the Recreation Community Life meeting that Mr. Spitznagel did bring up about the ambulance billing. Everybody did get the email that was sent out, and also I made hard copies, and the office made hard copies, and everybody has that in their box too. Just watching the meeting and stuff, and I'm thinking I'm going to talk to Mary and how maybe we should probably put that, some kind of blurb or something maybe in the journal, and maybe even on our website. Like, okay, so ambulance billing, did you receive, almost like one of those questions and answers, did you receive a billing, and you could see it there, that if, just some food for thought. I know, Brian, and something maybe
Yeah.
you could talk about too, or anybody else. Or,
You could even just post that letter,
yeah,
like on your department or something, yeah.
something, well, I think we need to get that out there too. It's been the same, but I think now we got it straightened out with a actual, it's always been the hearsay, but now we got to, it's reworded, and I'm glad that was, pushed and gone in that direction, so thank you for that, and everybody who was part of that. Let's see. Mornings meetings with the mayor, we did have in the journal, those will resume in July. We'll put it in the July issue. I think I'm going to stick to the same day. It just depends on with some of the things that are going on in the village right now. I got to make sure my calendar is free that day, because that day seems like a day that other meetings are taking place. But it's going to happen anyway. So the morning meetings with the mayor will resume in July. I did, and this, I did want to, this is something I'm sure everybody's going to comment right now. I think most of the village knows, but if anybody doesn't, I think we'll also talk, at least mention it in our next meeting, to, under deceased residents. But as everybody knows, on June 4th, that was Thursday, correct? June 4th, Thursday, we did have a retirement celebration for our K-9 police officer. Okay, and Aro was there, and it was very nice, and that evening and that morning, Aro was very sick, and Mike Gervasi, his partner, did take him to the regular vet that he sees, and unfortunately was very sick and was put down. And I know a lot of residents have asked, what are we, are we going to do something? We all know that what they did, it happened very fast. They contacted me. Actually, we were putting the agenda together for that proclamation, and also to have Mike adopt Aro at that time officially, because he was village property. And they had the Aro's last ride from the veterinarian hospital to the funeral home, and there was a procession, with police officers. I asked at that time, and they just kept it kind of private to other K-9 officers and our personnel here, officers. Mike is on vacation right now. He took some time off, and I did talk to Stan today, and at this time, moving forward, we're going to talk to Mike when he comes back on, if we have something for Aro and stuff. So I will share that with you too, in case somebody says, well, is the village doing anything so we can have something or something like that? So we're going to have some discussions with Mike, and you'll find out, you guys will, know all that too. So the chief just wanted me to share that at this time, we still have it. We want to talk to Mike about that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Was Aro the first officer in Walton Hills to pass away while still an officer?
As far as we know it's our first time, but you mean as far as yes. That question I'm not sure, but I thought, that's, and I'm going to find that out, but I don't know that answer. I know since I've been in the village, we've never had that, but it would have to be, some of you who have been lifetime residents and stuff are here a long time might know that answer. I never heard of that. I just don't, I'm going to just guess that probably not. Just knowing our village and how tight we are, I think we would probably have a little memorial somewhere or a little plaque somewhere. But I will find that out from Stan. No one's ever said anything, but I don't want to guess on it, because I certainly don't want to not honor somebody if they lost their life while in service.
How old was that dog, Mayor?
He was 12 years old.
He was 12?
Yes, he was 12 years old.
13.
13?
He worked,
Because,
well,
that
he
was
worked,
somewhat
He worked
shocking.
for us for 12 years.
Huh?
He worked for us for 12 years. He was like 12, yeah, he worked for us. He's 13 years old. He was an officer for 12 years. He was employed by the village of Walton Hills for 12 years. And, people say, why do you talk that way? Because they are considered a police officer. And that's why they have their last drive and their last ride and stuff. Yeah, and he was one of the longest running, serving canine dogs in the area. And we will share more of that. We'd like to, we'll talk to the chief and Mike, but just as everybody knows, he was a very, he done this village and this surrounding communities well. You probably remember a few years ago in Bedford, he captured the one person who, I think it was a shooting, actually killed somebody. His specialty was narcotics. He has kept a lot of drugs off the streets in this area. And that's something we all should be very proud So he's done a great job. There's been another question that you're probably fielding like I'm fielding, are we getting another dog? That hasn't been breached. We're just kind of let things settle down a little bit and see. I don't think Mike at this time, I don't think he's interested. It's a very large commitment. And I want to make something clear, and I know everybody in this room understands, but just for our residents to think about too. Very big commitment for the partner. Very big commitment for Mike. I mean, you're with that dog, and go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
When I was talking to Sergeant Gervaisi, he said it's a minimum 10-year commitment by the partner, the officer, the handler.
Because you've got to do continued training. He was constantly being trained, to keep that intensity and that big separation between being working and being the family dog. He went home every night with Mike, and then the family had that responsibility of taking care of him, feeding him right, giving him the correct medical care, taking him when he was sick, just really a big partnership. And I know we witnessed it at his retirement because he was an officer and he was brought in here. When Mike took his lunch, he came in with his partner. The employees here and his fellow police officers got very tight with him, just like they would a human officer. They got attached to him. They a lot of times felt they were secure when he was on the job with them, because he would hear and see things that maybe they didn't. So it's really it's a big loss for the village, but wow, 12 years of doing a great job for us. So more of that you'll understand, more of that will be discussed. I'll probably be discussed at Tuesday too. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Will we still be giving the proclamation posthumously when Sergeant Gervaisi is ready?
Yes, that's some of the things we'll be talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. How we want, we'll be talking. And I just want to, our residents just are so great and so concerned. In fact, the retirement party was, a small thing, and I had some residents that wanted to do something at the lake and talked about it, and Mike was good with that, and the chief was good with that. They talked to Josephine Wardle was one of them, very concerned about having a nice thing. The plan was to have something 4th of July, have him come down there, because 4th of July he's been down there quite a few times. The kids pet him, they go up to him, Mike does a little demonstration, shows, introduces them, and so that was something that we were hoping was going to take place too, but it just didn't happen. So he's in a better place with some fellow canines, police canines. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to talk or add to that. Let's see, do I have?
Okay, I'm going to backtrack for 1 second.
Yes, go ahead.
Catherine Spitznagel said regarding the ambulance billing, can Oakwood provide information on any fees that were collected from Walton Hills residents? So we can look into that to see if anybody did get charged. And yes, I will check on that. I'll forward that to the chief.
Okay, let's see. I think that pretty much covers it. For me, with other business, does anybody else have any other business they want to share?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yes. I'd just like to inform the rest of council that we had a Recreation Committee meeting earlier, and the recommendation from the committee was that the basketball court and the tennis court be removed from the service department and turned into green space at this time. I think with the conversation we had about $50,000 striping roads and Kimball with raising the trash, if we turned around and spent $30,000 to do something, I don't think the residents would be very happy with that either. So at this time, I think just having the green space down the road, we can see what we can do with it. But right now, just to close it, put a closed sign up, lock it up, the fence that you can do at the tennis court, And I understand that part of the basketball posts have been removed, the backboards, I guess, already. So that is our recommendation, that the service department, as we discussed with Rob the other night, would do the work to remove what's there and turn it into green space at this time.
How does the rest of the council feel with that?
Just for clarification, did you say tear out the basketball and the tennis courts?
Make green space out of there, yeah.
Out of both of those?
That's like basketball.
The
And then-
basketball.
Just the basketball.
Just the basketball,
basketball.
yeah,
Tennis courts would be locked.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say, if it was both of them, I don't know if Rob and his staff would be able to do that
Yeah.
this year.
No, we just the basketball.
Some other restoration projects too, but definitely he did say he could accomplish the basketball courts. With that said, I know some residents had some concern. I think the important part to stress here, which you probably did in your meeting, it's doesn't mean they permanently go away. It's about, how the finances are. If something were to change, I mean, that's also something we'll have a good feel on what's there, and when we look at what we're spending on the striping and some of the road repairs, we'll see where we're at, and also, with the sale here, let's, I guess my point is, because they're removed and turned into green space doesn't mean they might not be replaced at a later date.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to get with Natalie and talk with her and have something printed in the journal in reference to recreation. As a resident, what would you like to see as far as recreation goes? If they have some ideas, like a survey, and then they can just put them in the white mailbox, just tear it off the bottom and put it on the white mailbox. So we have some ideas what people may want here,
Okay.
Chairwoman Terlowski, I have another question that you guys, Mr. Harkeye mentioned something about the baseball courts. Was that batting cages? Was that part of you all's group discussion?
No, we didn't
No?
discuss it.
Okay.
Let me just touch base on that though. And normally earlier in the year, they'll have some college people that get back. A lot of the cleanup hasn't taken place. A lot of the cleanup gets accomplished by the seasonal workers. The seasonal workers, which are the high school, right now, they're all high school students, haven't started yet. And I see in your report that is one of the things they'll be starting and stuff. So we'll make note of that area. But a lot of that, instead of having our service guys who are very tied up into that, we have the seasonal workers do a lot of that cleanup down there, And usually they get in there earlier because we have college students that are ready to go. This year, it's just been a very different year with that. So, but we do have enough high school seasonal workers, and we got a good group, a lot of returning ones, some new ones. A lot of them are residents, which is a great thing. They're very familiar with our kids, and it's nice to have somebody that you feel is, might know your kid. There's a little connection there. So, but we'll make that note for them and the seasonal workers, hopefully. But I know there's some things up there that could even, be cleaned up that we don't task. We task these seasonal workers to keep some of that clean too. So I mentioned it's on the report here, clean pavilion, restrooms, and they sand and they paint things. So.
May I photograph?
Yes.
Mr. Harkeye also mentioned something about striping at the racetrack. How does that typically happen? Is that?
I think that will fall perfectly into your infrastructure committee. Because if it's going to be, I don't know if that's something Rob would stripe, in-house, or if that was striped, I'll have to talk to him outside by a contractor.
I
So
I paid a contractor to do that myself.
then we would have that.
I'd rather not have to do that. though.
So get a price for that. We can talk about that in the infrastructure committee, and falls right into that.
Regarding the
What did you say,
officer,
Danny?
Mr.
What did
Nielsen,
you
Fred
say?
Nielsen had responded that he believes that Aro was the first officer to pass
I
away.
can't hear her.
I'm sorry, Angela, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just backtracking to your question about the, was Aro the first officer to pass away while still in active duty? And Fred Nielsen said he believes he was.
I do too.
I think he's right.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We also, in a rec committee meeting, came to a consensus to put in for the Cleveland Cavaliers community grant for a price of $17,000, which would include asphalt replacement. Mr. Kalman had gotten a updated proposal from a company that would do it for just under $11,000. The hoops, and our prior bid was $20,000 for that, but that was the takeout also. So since our service department is taking that out, that I'm assuming that's where that money's coming from. And then again, the hoops are about $5,000. We decided not to go with asking for the VersaCourt at this time, which would have added another $17,000 to that proposal. We felt that even though you don't get it if you don't ask for it, we asked for it once already, and they didn't give it to us. So maybe if we asked just for the asphalting, we might have better luck with them. So I will revise the letter of inquiry to reflect the the total of $17,000. I did rewrite some of it to reflect the latest demographics and incomes and things like that of the communities. And there's a spot here, of course, for the mayor to sign, for Natalie Buck to sign, and all of council to sign. So I'll have this revised and over to the secretaries tomorrow and on letterhead, and if the rest of the council agrees with that, then we can just all come in and sign it this week, and then you can send it in.
Right. And Brian, anything, you can give a rough draft to Mary, and she can put it on the letterhead and do whatever you need to do. Don't feel you have to, use the village resources here, and
Very
you
good.
can put that, whatever you need to do. And just to kind of get back, so I don't want you to think that the reason I said refer the striping to the infrastructure committee, as Ray, you mentioned the budget, I've had Rob say, Natalie, well, I can't keep taking it out of my budget. So any of those expenses, I think we've got to incur as over and above what they budgeted for. You know what I mean? So that's why I think getting a price for that is important too.
All right.
You know what I mean? And it would be included, if they're up, someone's up by the playground, on that road, that would include that. It has to be separate. It's separate. But I gotta be, it's just like you mentioned, the tennis courts, I gotta be, I mentioned the Rob, because, he will outside, sometimes your department heads tell you they can do it, and they don't want to tell you they can't. And express to him, you gotta be honest with me. I ask you if you and your staff can do it, and you have the time to do it. If you say yes, well, myself and council, we're going to take you up on that. The perk, if you say no, that's okay too. I just have to, they know their schedule best. So with that conversation, the basketball court wasn't a problem to remove it if we got into the, besides locking it like your committee decided to do, remove it. And that's why I know you mentioned too, it would be a bigger issue. That's why I'm just we don't want to take everything out and not complete it, you know? And he's pretty good at prioritizing it, and I want to make sure we do that.
So did we hear correct, the hoops have already been removed, or the backboards, or something like
The
that?
Yes.
hoops have, yes.
The hoops, okay.
Yeah. And then it's been locked, the tennis courts. I mean, even with that, and that'd be my last thing, but I guess with both of them, I think, and that's something, because I was thinking about this, you know, so you got the basketball and you got rid of the tennis court, and we're not using either one. If we decide, you know, something happens, even though one's more expensive than the other, the thing is, do you do one or the other, even if it's more expensive, if the use is there? So Gloria, maybe that's not a bad idea. You find out, is one use more, I mean, it doesn't, if you spend something and no one is up there using it, it's, even if it's more, you know, I don't know. Tennis used to be popular. It just seems like lately we've had residents concerned about the tennis courts and wanting to use them. So maybe that, you know, I'm just saying if things were to change, you know what I mean? I think it's not just all of a sudden automatically decide if something happens, do the bathroom. Maybe we should think of, I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. And Mayor Colograph, if I may comment, well, I was able to watch part of the meeting while, well, I wasn't watching. I was listening to it while I was driving from another point. I wasn't watching. But I did hear Councilman Spitznagel share some data on demographics and particularly age demographic, and it sounded as though the age, there has been a shift in Walton Hills, the population or the percentage of seniors.
That was, Councilwoman Terlowski mentioned that. The numbers I came up with, and this was from the website statisticalatlas.com. I've got a few different websites here. The number I came up with was 32.5% age 65 and older, which I can't remember what it was. It was around 30%, I believe, when we did our master plan. Now, Gloria had heard 50%, right?
50, I heard 55 now.
55%?
50, and then lately I've been hearing 55, that's just,
Do you know what source that was from?
no.
We might be able to get it from the new.
We have-
Does it give the median age?
I was just
Is
going
it?
to say the census.
The new
There were, the website did break down from like age group 65 to 70, 70 to, you know, whatever. It did break that down. I just added them up from age 65.
So, I mean, I only asked that question because, you know, going along with the potential survey, you know, to see, you know, when the master plan was done, that's been 15, 20 years. And, you know, people may have different interests.
Sure.
Some may want to do tennis, some may not. But I think it was reported today that there were people in there over the weekend. You know, so I think the survey is a great idea.
Yeah.
Put it out there and find out what are our residents' recreational interests here in the village in 2021.
Right.
And again, get the survey out there to as many people as.
Check the microphone.
We said this before, but again, in summary, before you think about spending any money or taking on any projects, let's find out what the residents want. And to me, the easiest way to find out what the residents want is to put a poll both in the Journal and in the Owl and say, we're thinking about what we're going to do with recreation here in the community. However way you want to word it. Put boxes in there. Would you like a basketball court? Would you like a tennis court, a volleyball court, a bocce ball court, a garden, whatever? And have them put check marks in there, and then based on the responses you get, make your decisions, you know? It's got to be up to the residents, not up to the 6 or 10 of us, actually. I mean, we're all residents too. with the exception of John, I don't think you don't either, but nevertheless, I think that's a great way to do it. And another suggestion that I made, just so you know, or we have a photograph, I suggested that the council people have probably a list of constituents. They could do an email blast in a few seconds to poll their constituents and get some response even before the next meeting from the people that they communicate with. I would guess that all of them have a database of people that they have their email addresses, and see what everybody thinks. As far as raising the money goes, to me, what I think, there are so many ways to raise money that that's the least of our concerns. If the village has $5,000 to put down on it, and we need another 15, I think we can find patrons that would gladly help us. Councilman Spitznagel is going to look at the cabs. Again, we give the city, the Bedford school system lots of money. I wonder if anybody has ever, I don't think anybody's ever asked Bedford if they give some of it back to us. And in return, hey, make the basketball things the home of the Bearcats, or what's the name of their team? Bedford
Bearcats.
Bearcats, yeah. I mean, painted in their colors. And I'm not sure that those stanchions have to be discarded. It could be possible they could be restored for a fraction of what it would cost to replace them. That's something we could look into as well. Get a price on, take them someplace, have them sandblasted, painted, they can make them look really nice, and they might not have to be discarded. So there, that's the end.
Thank you. Just to touch base with, when you talk about the Bedford school system, the Bedford school system, as you know, if we need abatement for our businesses, we can go to them and ask for abatement for our businesses and stuff. And we have, there is several businesses in the village that have gotten, so some of those things are unseen. I just don't want to make it think that our community never does receive any money, and we do go to them for abatement on different things. We're allowed to give up to 50% even without their approval. We still have to notify them and all that. But I just wanted to take a lot and on that, and other communities in our school system do that too. So, any other questions? Any other business? Anybody wants to discuss anything? Or
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
I had a couple of calls from residents that were asking, and so I wanted to bring it up since next week's potentially our last meeting. But their concerns are fireworks being enforced, or the non-blowing off of fireworks being enforced this year. Last year was extreme in a lot of areas. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. I'm personally hoping that when everything comes around to the 4th of July, the week before, the week after, it was almost the entire month of July. Surrounding communities, people were complaining about how many fireworks were going off. So I don't know exactly how we can do that, because by the time the firework blows off and the officer gets there, there's no sign of anybody. But it was something that was brought up, so I just wanted to bring it up for the resident.
Well, just as a follow-up to that, when they receive a complaint for fireworks or they visually see them, they do go to the house that they think has the fireworks, or if they've actually seen it, or if they get a complaint and they enforce the law. That I know for sure. And I will, share that concern with the chief again.
Well, and some of the areas in the village, quite honestly, are so difficult. Where I am, it's difficult to discern if somebody's blowing fireworks off on Dunham Road or Valley. So I do understand the difficulty with it. But the resident that brought it up has several animals, and it really spooks them. So their concern was, just to ask the officers to be mindful, again.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it will not be as bad this year as it was last year.
There's somebody by me that blows them off now, or and it's
Stop
Do you
talking
hear them?
about
I
me.
mean, I wish I could find out who they
No,
were.
I hear them
But,
as
yeah,
well. I do hear
Going
them.
up Memorial Day weekend.
No, are you kidding me?
Yeah, so, yeah.
My dad used to
Still can't
blow off fireworks, but no, I hear them as well. I do.
Yeah. Mayor?
Yes.
I do have one quick thing. We've been stricken with power outages,
Yes.
seemingly more than normal in the recent weeks. Do we know anything from the electric company about that?
No, just, we didn't have any lengthy ones. We had those short.
Yeah, short bursts.
Yeah, and some of those weren't outages, they were actually spikes. And they're claiming,
Yeah.
Kevin Smalley, our rep, that those were part of some adjustment with the season change, I mean, but they feel they're rectified. But go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor Colgraf.
Specific.
Yeah, I had some conversation with First Energy, and they took a lot of information. I gave them all the street names that the outages had been occurring and described them. What they shared with me, they believe they were simply, could be seasonal, but also just circuit breakers popping and then resetting. That's why they were so short. When I gave them all of the list, all of the streets that I knew of, they said that they were going to send a crew out to just patrol to see if there's debris, things like that hanging from wires that may be causing. I haven't received and seen any outage since that call, whatever day that was last week.
Yeah, it was
But-
last week.
Yeah, I took one call last week from a resident.
Yeah, but I gave them all of the streets and then some. I gave them some extras.
It seemed like what was so noticeable about that one, it was like 2 or 3 in a row.
In a row?
Right,
Yeah, your clocks, just
Right.
enough to have to reset every.
I think we even got a little more notice than when it just goes out and then comes back, because it was like, then you wonder sometimes if it's your house or just your neighbors.
Right.
When you can go out and look outside and see someone else's, I think the reason we got more calls, because people were wondering, was there a power problem, or was it just,
In their
maybe I'm having
house.
problems at my house?
Right.
Where when it goes out, you look outside and say, oh, my neighbor's out too. It's
Yeah.
not me having a malfunction, And we can inquire. I'm thinking about actually having him come in again. Remember, he came in not too long ago. Probably not a bad idea, once we can get rolling here with our open meetings, and have him come in and just talk to us. And, like to get him, the representative from the Northeast Ohio Sewer District. Doesn't hurt for residents to put a name with a face, and for us to put a name with our face, and they like to come out too, so. Anything else? Let me just recap then. So we're going to have the legislation, item A for suspension, item B will be on there for suspension, item C for suspension, item D. And I don't think that should do it. We don't have any other legislation or anything that I see.
No. I will give you a budget discussion next, it'll be a long one. Sarah planned accordingly. I will give you a budget discussion next week. I have to thank everyone for their patience and my efforts to stay caught up on daily and tax stuff that I left the little pieces like entering credit cards at the end of each month and stuff like that. So I just got to button up the last couple months. Everything else is in there. They just have to literally be buttoned up so that I can run financials for everything. So then that will have that.
And I'll put you on the spot for 1 second. With
Yeah.
tax season closing, how are we doing as far as,
We're doing well.
As
Yeah,
far as people
nothing,
buy.
no deficits. Yeah, nothing major.
Good.
So.
good.
I did have some residents call throughout to ask if we tax unemployment, which we didn't, and I told them if you did earn unemployment, though, if you don't mind just sending a copy so that I could gauge who was unemployed, what the returns might look like overall, or how many of our residents were unemployed, but not that I didn't have that many, so, yeah.
How are we, Angela, and this is something you can discuss next week, and then I'll be done, but I know they're keeping everything the same, but there's still discussion, John, and you about how they're going to do with the people who are working from home, and where
So
the
right now,
taxes will be
correct.
distributed.
Oh my
That's been
gosh.
changing, so
This is back and forth all the time, so I mentioned to you guys months ago in Franklin County, there was a lawsuit about, the home city where the person was working, trying to say, hey, give us the tax money. That got put aside, like, no, we're not doing it that way, but then now it's been put into House and Senate bill to go ahead and potentially do it, and to, in one of the bills, I think the House bill, to potentially also do it for 2020. I don't think this is gonna affect us as much as other cities, obviously. We had, we're mostly manufacturing, so anybody who was home and back, as far as I'm aware from talking to some of our company leaders. But that's gonna create, especially if they retro back to 2020, it's gonna be a nightmare for municipalities to have to go back and refund. What I kept telling everyone all along that called was, if you were not automatically home before all this and you were home for pandemic, you can send me paperwork if you want, but I'm gonna sit on it until we know where all this legislation stands. And so no one ever ended up even sending in anything. I think, yeah, it's, so it's still right there, we're waiting to see what's gonna happen in the House and the Senate with this bill about whether or not the people who ended up going home because of the pandemic to work from home are now gonna have to, will that municipality that was where the workplace was have to now send the taxes? Because a lot of people call and they're like, ooh, my money, but I always ask them, do you live in a township? Because then it would be your money. If not, it's going to go back to your work city or your home city anyway if they collect, if they're part of Rita or whatever. It's not necessarily going in everybody's pocket. So I will keep you abreast of anything else that's going on with it, but that's where it's at. I kind of thought it lost a little momentum when Franklin County put the kibosh on it, but it did not. So that's where we're at. But we've processed nothing for it so far, and I don't, like I said, I don't anticipate
yes,
we
we're
process too
very
much.
fortunate that way.
No, if anything, we picked up a couple people who were already like working for Microsoft and things like that, that were not, it wasn't pandemic related, so we picked up some people that work from home on a regular basis over the last year.
Well, just because it's at the state legislature doesn't mean it's going to pass either.
Correct.
Right,
And
absolutely.
I know
Absolutely.
Cleveland is, just read something today that they'd be devastated.
They would, some cities could possibly be
yeah.
decimated if that happened, absolutely.
Yeah.
You think of cities that have a lot more service industry, like Independence even, and if they had a lot of employees working from home in other cities, that is going to be a huge hit to them, and that's the hard thing, and this always happens with our tax association when we meet. I mean, it kind of always gets stuck to us at the tax end, because the rest of the people legislating just don't look at the big picture of the impact it's going to have when they make decisions about a lot of things. So, yeah, hopefully there's going to be a long, hard look at how it will decimate some of the cities if they have to do all these refunds. I mean, not to mention, obviously, more manpower and time to process it all, but
Okay, anybody else have anything? If not, I'd like to ask for a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for adjournment.
Second?
Second?
Councilwoman Brenner Miller?
Yes.
Councilman Linville?
Yes.
Councilwoman Allen?
Yes.
Councilwoman Churlowski? Yes. Councilman Spitznagel?
Yes.
Councilman Weed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Committed to the whole meeting of Tuesday, June 8, 2021, adjourned at 9:34. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.